ladies and gents? Robert Sykes, KetoSavage.com, and today's video is going to dive into an extended fast. So, I get a lot of questions about fasting. Everybody wants to know if they should incorporate a fast, especially if they're trying to lose body fat. Lots of questions around fasting. Generally speaking, I don't do a lot of fasting. I do intermittent fasting pretty much every single day because I don't like eating frequently. I like eating a larger meal with ample time in between each feeding window so my body has some time to digest and absorb. I think that's one of the main benefits of keto. Rather than being a slave to food, have to eat every two or 3 hours, you can eat every 10 or 12 hours or longer. But I don't normally do a lot of extended fasting. Generally speaking, extended fasting is a stressor on the body. It can be very good. It can be very advantageous, especially from like a cell turnover, cell apoptosis, autophagy standpoint. You hear all these buzzwords about fasting, and those are all great things, but I feel like fasting oftentimes gets overused because it is such a popular thing right now. People just always want to fast. Fasting is a stressor on the body. Being in a caloric deficit is a stressor on the body. It is not a wise move to try to lose body fat by reducing calories, so having a stressor in that regard, and then throwing a fast on top of it. I never recommend fasting in the context of already being in a caloric deficit. That's just too much stress, and your body's going to fight back and not really get the response you're looking for. However, if you're in a caloric maintenance or a caloric surplus, having a strategic fast, kind of peppered in throughout, your time frame, whether it be, every 6 months, every year, quarterly, can be good. So I have not done an extended fast for over a year now. I had my contest prep, I had my reverse diet. So during that entire time, I was in a caloric deficit and found it, not worth trying to jump into an extended fast as well, like I just got done explaining. However, that's no longer the case. I just finished my reverse diet. I've been able to bump my caloric intake up to about 4,500 to 4,700 calories a day, which is a very healthy intake for me, and basically has allowed me the flexibility to start playing around with an extended fast again. So what I wanted to do is, since it had been so long since I had done an extended fast, my last extended fast prior to this was 4.5 days. I wanted to be able to finish this contest prep, finish this reverse diet, get my metabolism and my caloric baseline ramped back up, and then incorporate an extended fast as a way to basically wipe the slate clean and start fresh going into my building phase. So now the contest prep is over and the reverse is over. My main focus is going to be eating at a caloric maintenance, eating at a caloric surplus, and putting on as much lean muscle tissue as possible. I'll probably do a whole other series on that. But before I started that officially, I wanted to kind of wipe the slate clean, do an extended fast, and just give my body, my brain, my being a time to relax, take count of what has happened thus far, and start fresh going into the building phase. So I started my fast on Sunday the 21st at 7 p.m. I broke that fast 5.5 days later, Saturday morning at 7 a.m. I think that winds up being about 132 hours. During that fast, I did not have any cravings. I did not have any overwhelming desire to eat whatsoever. I was supplementing with the Redmond's Relight electrolyte mix. I was doing about 4 scoops of that a day. I was drinking a gallon of water a day. Did not once have headaches, did not once have muscle cramps. A lot of people suggest not training during a fast, and I don't ever recommend necessarily not training. Training is also a stressor on the body. You don't want to overload your body with stressors. So what I wanted to do was basically leverage that or use that as an opportunity to include a deload week. It's also been quite some time since I've had a deload week for my training due to the contest prep and the reverse diet. So I figured I'd pair the extended fast with the deload. So I trained every single day of the fast, but I did back off quite a bit on the intensity. I still ran every day, but again, I'm doing a pretty leisurely run, so that's not a huge stressor there. So every single day I trained, every single day I ran, and never once had any issues from an energy standpoint or performance standpoint as it pertains to not having food coming in. I got some pretty interesting metrics here, so I just want to dive into Heads Up Health and show you what some of the numbers were looking like. So let's do that now. All right, so here we are within my Heads Up Health dashboard. Before I started the fast, I had a very large meal with my family, so I came in at a pretty hefty 183.3 pounds on Monday morning. This is I started my fast on Sunday at 7 p.m. But that next morning when I, woke up and stepped on the scale, this is a reflection of what all I ate that Sunday prior to starting the fast. So very heavy there. That's the heaviest I've been in probably a year. And then as the fast continued throughout Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you could just see my weight continuing to drop, with that most pronounced drop being right there the next day, 177.3, and then going all the way to a low of 174.4. This weight here, 176.5, that is after I've started consuming food again. So at the end of the fast, my lowest was 174.4. So pretty good drop in weight there. Again, this is mostly all water retention. As soon as you reintroduce the food, that weight will go back up. So do not fast with the sole intention of just losing weight, because it's not an accurate reflection of what your body's actual mass is. It's just fluids. So I want to have that metric, and then we'll have the weight. I also want to throw in my blood glucose. So we can see that my blood glucose was a little bit high there after that large bolus of food, 104, and it just continued to drop. I was getting some pretty crazy numbers here, 46 milligrams per deciliter. This is an inaccurate reading. I accidentally put it in as a millimolar, and it was 3.9. That's inaccurate. The lowest I got during this entire fast was 39 milligrams per deciliter on the blood glucose, which is pretty crazy low. A lot of people are getting rushed off to the hospital if they're like a diabetic and they're that low. But I felt fine, no headaches, no muscle cramps, no drop in energy. Let's also throw in our blood ketones. These continued to rise, had an inverse relationship with the glucose. I think my height was at 7.2 millimolar. This is without any exogenous ketones, no ketone salts, no ketone esters. I reached 7.2 millimolars just as a result of the fasting. I also want to throw in some of my Oura data because this is interesting. So my AM readiness score actually continually got better, or it basically had a higher average above baseline during the entire fast. I'm normally never in the 70s. I'm pretty much always in like the 50s. So consistently being in the 70s during this fast was an interesting data point. And then my resting heart rate. My resting heart rate plummeted. I was averaging probably about 50, 60. That's pretty much where I'm at normally. And when I'm sleeping, it's really low. But just throughout the day, I was 40s. I think the lowest I had was 44. I think Crystal clocked me once at 41 beats per minute in the middle of the day. So very low resting heart rate throughout this fast. So pretty interesting information here. I feel like the blood glucose, everybody always takes a keen interest in the blood glucose and the ketones in the absence of food. So as the calories were absent, my weight started to drop as a result of flushing out the fluids. Ketones rose, glucose fell, had pretty much an inverse relationship there. So pretty crazy numbers. Again, having a high of 7.2 on the ketones and a low of 39 on the blood glucose. That's the lowest I've ever been that I've actually tracked and seen. So pretty interesting there. So I want to talk a little bit about this overall effect on my mental cognition. So during the course of this fast, I was doing the deload with the training, so I wasn't going crazy heavy or intense there. I was still running, but one thing I noticed is that my mental clarity and overall productivity shot through the roof. I was typing faster, I was picking up sentences faster, I was just speaking with more clarity and more confidence. It really is crazy how when you really start humming with the ketones and you're in a fasted state, your brain is just on overdrive. And I think it has to do something with, there's a lot of theories here, but like just simply from an evolutionary standpoint, if you're not eating and you need to find food to consume it, then your body goes into this like survival mode. It's like, look, you don't have any food, you need to find some food. Let's give you some energy. Let's give you some mental clarity, so that you can outwit your prey, your quarry, and then you go out there, hunt that food, kill that food, and consume that food to survive. And I feel like that's basically what's happening here, except I'm obviously not in a prehistoric Paleolithic time period. I'm able to, eat at my will, but I haven't, and I'm able to just kind of like leverage this as an opportunity to just be overly productive with anything that I'm working on at the time being. So I think what I'd like to do is, since I'm going to be in a building phase, in a caloric surplus phase for the next 2 or 3 years, because I don't shred down and compete every year, which is a whole other video entirely, but it's not a wise move to compete every year. I'm going to be in this surplus, and being in a caloric surplus with the goal of prioritizing and optimizing lean muscle gain is great, but since you're constantly in a caloric surplus, it's a stressor in the body in that regard too. I mean, your digestive system's constantly being worked. I mean, everything's just being worked. So giving everything a little bit of a breather through the use of a fast can be very strategic. Plus, it helps the absorption of the foods when you reintroduce foods back in, because everything's just, like I said, been able to wipe the slate clean, get a fresh breath, and start anew. So I think what I'm going to do is I typically do a deload every 6 weeks, 6 to 9 weeks, when I'm in a building phase. I think I'm going to do a shorter fast, probably like a 3 or 4 day extended fast during my deloads going forward. So every 6 weeks, for instance, I'm going to do a deload and then a 3 or 4 day extended fast, just kind of pairing those together. Pairing those together worked out really, really well for me because I wasn't having to stress about the training and I wasn't having to stress about the food. And it just opened up my mind and my time to be ultra productive elsewhere in my life. So that's my plan going forward. Again, I don't ever recommend fasting in the context of already being a caloric deficit. However, if you're trying to build, if you're trying to maintain, if you're trying to grow, then sprinkling in an extended fast every once in a while can be very advantageous. So that pretty much wraps up the video on fasting. Hope you learned something, and I'll be in touch because I got some other things in the works as we speak. So I'll talk to you soon. Take care.